You'll notice that there's slides up there. I'm not going to be talking to the slides. One of the members of our group is a professional photographer, and instead of participating in all of the activities with the group, he went out with his, what they call life guide, which was the professor. He went out every day for 4 hours to take snaps of what he thought was worthy. So this is a month's worth of his efforts, and he had, as I recall, he had 6,000 pictures, which now it's down to 72. So it gives you the flavor. It doesn't. He didn't take pictures of the group. You won't see any pictures of our group or our activities or any of that. It's really just Cuenca. It's the whole idea of Cuenca. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of reading for you because I want you to know what got me hooked on all of this. So this is a brochure that came out from Northwestern, and when I graduated in 1956, I've been getting their brochures ever since, and I get their travel brochures, and they go in the garbage, almost as fast as I get them, because I always figure, okay, they're alumni things, they're going to cost more, I can go to the same place, do the same thing without doing an alumni thing. So I've never taken an alumni trip, and I never even looked at it seriously. But this is what it says in the first paragraph or so. It's called AHI, Adventures in International Living. Ever dreamed of living abroad? Ever wished you could learn a new language? Ever hoped to understand another culture? Ever wanted to have an adventure, either for yourself or your whole family? We at Travel know a place where you can do all four with a lot of fun. Our exclusive 4-week program makes it possible for you to pursue an international lifestyles exploration in beautiful Cuenca, Ecuador. So that's what got me hooked, and I signed up for it almost a year before it happened. And in between, I took out the insurance, and in between, I broke a hip, and I never even considered not going. I know I'm going on this trip. I'm just so enthusiastic about it. I've never been that enthusiastic about going someplace. Usually I get excited when I get on the plane or on the ship, and this time I was all excited before I ever went. And what continued getting me excited was the people who were running it had sent out emails, and they started sending them 8 weeks before we went. And I got 21 different emails from them, which kept me very, very excited about the whole thing. And I printed out last night the first email to kind of give you the flavor of why this was getting to be more exciting for me all the time. It's hard to believe, but just in a little over 8 weeks, we will be meeting you here in Cuenca for what we know will be an adventure and experience guaranteed to enrich your life. It will be fun, it will be work, and there will be a new experience around every corner. Christine and I are co-creators of AHI's International Lifestyle Explorations Program, and we will be your hosts this September here in Cuenca. Our goal is that you leave Cuenca and Ecuador loving this wonderful little country, feeling comfortable anywhere in South America, and rattling off Spanish, como un bebé cuencano. That didn't happen. We know some of you are straight-out beginners, like I was the first time I got off the plane in Ecuador, and some of you have significant Spanish background, like Christine had as she arrived. Obviously, with private tutoring from your individual language and lifestyle guides, you'll be conversing in Spanish from day one. Yes, they speak a little English too, but they will hardly ever let on, and will gently prod you to understanding using Spanish. You will be amazed at how fast you will learn, feeling comfortable in different situations. You'll also be amazed at how learning Spanish is a lifetime process, from which the more you learn, the more you'll realize you need to learn. The good news is that the Ecuadorians are very gentle and helpful people, and they will be so excited to hear you trying their language that they will bend over backwards to assist and help you. To make sure you start your journey with a good base, over the next weeks you will be receiving regular correspondence from us with helpful word and phrase lists, websites that will entertain and educate, fun pictures and information about life in Cuenca. what you should expect during your month here. We know you are busy, but if you can find time to spend about 20 minutes a day practicing, internalizing, and following up on the suggestions, you will have an even more rewarding time while here in Cuenca. For those of you at higher levels of Spanish ability, let us know when we will start pumping more adventurous tasks your way. Remember, you will be living in culture, which means you will be immersed in the language, the food, the traditions, the art, and all the other factors that make this program so unique and pioneering. Your days will be spent exploring, learning, enjoying, and sometimes even sitting back with your espresso and ice cream observing. At night you will be happily exhausted by all the input, but excited about a new adventure in the morning. We will be with you the whole time and are here to make sure that this is one of the most unique and rewarding trips of your life. We can't wait to see you here in your new South American home. Hasta pronto. I was hooked, and I mean, this just kept going on. With more pictures, more things that were happening there. It stayed very, very exciting until it got near the end. And near the end of the emails, it started saying, well, don't expect it to be like the United States. Sometimes the plumbing doesn't work, like we don't always have hot showers, and it kind of went on and on in that vein. But I wanted to read you this because what they promised is what they delivered. It was fabulous. They really did an outstanding job. And the people who did it, he had been the head of the Alumni Association in Colorado, and before that had been with the Chamber, and she was a teacher of Spanish, German, and gotcha. And when their son was grown, they decided that they were going to travel the world, and they were going to have their own adventure. And they put together this program. This was their idea, and they sold it to AHI, which is a group that does alumni travel. And now they're working on more places. There's one that's starting in Provence, but that's going to be with French. And they're talking about doing one in Bologna. And I think I talked to them a little bit about it. I think they're going to try to get royalties from it, that they're coming along with this. And, they will probably get royalties and try to develop this in different places. So it was it was interesting to get to know them, and they really were there all the time. Just to give you a couple of examples, the gal who was very friendly with me and lived next door to me went out one day, and she at her error she got hit by a cab. She thought that the bus stopped. She was not a bus, she was crossing the street. The bus stopped, and she made the wrong assumption that the light had changed. And so she walked out, and a cab came around and hit her. So she had significant damage in her leg, and did have to go home. But before that, these people were at the accident scene before the ambulance took her to the hospital. And they were there negotiating things at the hospital. And then another very nice thing they did, her room was next to mine, and she stayed in that room for a couple of days before her husband could get down and pick her up. And one of the gals on our floor was a nurse practitioner, and there was another couple on the floor. Well, the other couple, the woman, she stayed overnight with her, with the gal who injured her leg. I hung around for 2 days. And just went out if somebody else was there to look after her. And then one person on our floor stayed overnight with her the first night. I mean, it kind of gives you a sense of the kind of people we were dealing with on this trip. And when her husband came to pick her up, there was like a 4-hour turnaround. And so in that turnaround time, the people who organized this, they took the people I mentioned, the nurse practitioner, the gal who stayed overnight, myself, and the gal who was injured and her husband, out to the fanciest restaurant for lunch. And that's the way they were. They were very generous. Everything was very, very generous. Whenever we had meals, some of the meals were included. Whenever we had meals, There was all the wine you wanted to drink. It was very, very, very generous. Well, let me give you the flavor. I told you about what got me going. Now let me tell you as I go. I left out of Miami, and I met up with some of the other participants at that point who were traveling from, there was some from California, there were a couple other from Florida that we flew to Cuenca. We flew to Quito. We stayed overnight in Quito in a fancy, one of these Swiss hotels, which was very, very nice. And the next day, we took a tour at the equator, and then they took us to a restaurant for lunch. In the meantime, they picked up all our bags, and when we met them at the airport to go to Cuenca, they took all our bags right through to Cuenca. We never even had to touch the bags. And the next time we saw them, they were in our hotel in Cuenca. They put us up in a hotel for the first night in Cuenca, actually, because they had a fast turnaround. They had another group. This program is so popular, it sold out right away, and they were running one right after the other without a delay, which was probably a little bit of a mistake. But they put us up in a hotel, and the next day they took us around, gave us a tour of Cuenca, and they took our bags, and the next time we saw our bags, they were in our apartment. And I had a studio apartment. When I got to the apartment, there was this absolutely huge spray of flowers there, just huge, all colorful. They're plentiful. But it was such a welcome. And my bag was there. There's gorgeous flowers in the room. The room was a studio, very modern, with granite countertops and wood floors, and other apartments were colonial. Some of them were very old-fashioned. So there was a whole mix. We weren't all in the same building. We were in different buildings. There were probably about 10 people in my building, 30 people altogether. And to tell you about the people, of the 30, there were maybe 4 that were older than me. And there were 2 young people, young being in their 30s, 40s, and one was there with her parents. She was a professional, and she was actually doing some work, but her parents were older, and so she had gone with them. And there was a young fellow there who really wanted to learn Spanish. He was in he was an assessor in real estate, and he was there to really learn Spanish. When I said really learn Spanish, most of the people were like recent retirees. Some were very young retirees, and they were there to have a good time, to learn some Spanish. Some were from Arizona, some were from Florida. It'd really be nice to know a little bit of Spanish, but I think the majority of the people just wanted the experience and were really taken with what I read to you. So after we got into our apartments, the next thing that was to happen was we were to meet our lifestyle guides. So we were each assigned one person that would be with us for 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And it was really up to us what we did during that time. The one fellow, as I told you, he just took pictures, and that was what he did. Most of the people went to the school, spent a couple hours at the school, then went out and did things. The first day all of us did was we went to the market to get supplies. So our life guide took us to the market, helped us get whatever supplies we needed, and go back to our apartments with them. The second, and also the first day, we got our books and got a look at stuff. So the second day, I'm not going to tell you day by day, but I'm telling you about the second day. The second day, I forgot my books. And so I went to the school without my books, and she said, no, you got to have your books. We'll have to go back and get your books. So to describe the school, it was a big colonial building. It was drafty. Because I had trouble walking, there were like 3 flights of stairs, and I did like one flight, and they put a table out in the center area, and it was drafty. And for me, that wasn't, such a marvelous environment. So she comes back to my apartment, and I've got this nice red couch, and I've got this huge picture window that overlooks some of the cathedrals and things. That's really lovely. And she said, well, just get your books and let's go. I said, no, why don't you sit down for a minute? The sun is streaming in, it's beautiful. And so she sat for a minute, and then I suggested another minute. And then I suggested, why don't we just do our classes here? And she said, okay. So every day she would come to my apartment, and I would have papaya and cheese and crackers for our break, because at the school they had a break, So I had something for our break, and she just stayed, and we talked Spanish. I mean, I know very, very little, and I didn't want to try it on you guys, but she would ask me what happened. What did you do yesterday? What's going on? And she got to know some of the people, and one of the people was a problem, and so it was kind of fun to try to tell her in Spanish what was going on. So it was, it worked out really, really well with her. And some days we'd go to the market and pick up some fruit, and some days we'd just go for a walk and have hot chocolate. And one day we went to a wonderful museum. But I just wasn't in the mood for museums. I wasn't in the mood for some of that kind of stuff. So she did whatever I wanted to do, which was pretty laid back, which wasn't very much of an exertion, but it could be. I mean, it was the kind of program that could be as adventurous or as laid back as you want. I know the young guy who was with us, he was doing a lot of fishing, and he was doing a lot of other things and going up in the mountains. There were side trips. I didn't go on most of them. One I went to an indigenous area where, if you notice the pictures, there people were really dressed in their old-fashioned garb. And I don't know if you saw the roasted pig, but they were roasting. You could see pigs being roasted all over the place and eating them. And then they also ate what they call cuy, C-U-Y-O, the little guinea pigs. Yeah, they were very popular to eat, but of course that did quite interesting.
Isla Jean, did you know that Cuenca is famous for having centenarians, a lot of centenarians, people who are older? Did they tell you anything about that?
No, but I'm going to tell you about, and I can do that now. Cuenca has become a very, very popular place for retirees to live, because the cost of living is about 30% of what it is here.
Well, they think it might be the mountain air or something like that. They have a higher proportion than most places in the world of centenarians. You've heard of CBS 60 Minutes? They sent a news team out there to check to see if they could find maybe one of the older people and find out what it was that was causing that longevity. And so they were going through town, and they thought they'd found the oldest man sitting on a corner, and they started interviewing him, and they said, "Boy, you look pretty old." And this is a joke if you haven't figured it out. Anyway, you mind if I do? Well, let me let you.
And if I do, then what?
Is there food to do in the middle?
You were beginning to get too serious.
Tom's been chewing that cocoa leaf. Thank you.
I was getting too serious. I didn't get the punchline.
Well, so they thought they found the oldest man, and they asked him, they said, "Boy, you look old." He says, "Well, I feel pretty old today." So they said, "Well, can you tell us what your secret is to your longevity?" And he said, "Well, I don't know." He says, "I've just lived to be old." And so they said, "Well, you probably don't smoke, right?" He says, "Oh, yeah, I smoke a lot." He says, "In fact, I'm glad you reminded me." And he reaches in, he pulls out of his lapel a cigar. He says, "You know, we trade with Cuba," so he lights it up. And then the next thing, they said, "Well, you don't drink then, do you?" He said, "Are you kidding?" He says, "Look at this." He says, "I've got in my other some aguardiente, which is their equivalent of moonshine."
You chase me.
Yeah. And so finally they said, you smoke, you probably don't chase around. He says, "No, I've got 4 girlfriends." He says, "This is not going to be on TV, is it?" And so finally they said, "Well, how old are you?" And he says, "I'm 27.
Tom, get your wallet. Come on, more. That was truly bad. I'm telling you, he's chewing that cocoa leaf. Thank you. If you want to tell another joke, I'll just stay here. In fact,
Gone for 3 weeks, I've been sick.
just give me your wallet.
But you know, you did interrupt her speech.
Yeah.
I was really interested in what he was saying. Her speech.
It did not stop me. I shall persevere. Okay, getting to the fact that there are a lot of Americans there, that they have what they call gringo, well, two things. They have a website, and on the website they have something they call Gringo Tree. And Gringo Tree is for the people who speak English, and it tells everything that's going on, all the activities and things that are happening there. And it also gives them an opportunity, like if they're looking for a Spanish teacher, or they're looking for a place to rent, or whatever's happening, you can read about it on Gringo Tree. Well, I got hooked on Gringo Night, and Gringo Night was at one of the restaurant bars. The Americans congregate and speak English, and I would go every week, every Tuesday night. You could find it at Gringo Night. And it was just lots of fun. So I'd go up to people and ask them what their lifestyle was like and what they were doing there. Oh, and then I went to another Gringo bar on a Sunday afternoon, and I met an interesting couple. I walked up to the bar and talked to them, and they both worked for, what's the name of the disaster relief? They both worked for FEMA. They both worked for FEMA. And she was leaving that afternoon to go up to South Dakota, North Dakota to, help with some of the disasters that were there. But they just settled in Cuenca. They liked it there, and they were both employed, and they just traveled back and forth and found the lifestyle to their interest. It's in the mountains, Tom. How high is Cuenca, Tom? What is the altitude of Cuenca?
How high is
11,000 feet.
No, wrong.
8,300, 8,400.
Very.
I just read the
I know.
brochure. It's similar to Aspen.
How high is it again? It's
About 8,400 feet. Yes. Yeah. And it was very pleasant. The weather was not very good. It was early spring, and it was supposed to be really, really nice, but it wasn't. When I go to Gringo Night, they would say, "Oh, we never have weather like this. This is so unusual." And it would rain every day. It wasn't really cold. Maybe the lowest would be the 40s, but it would rain, and the sidewalks were all tile, and so I found it to be really hazardous. That is probably the only thing that keeps me from wanting to go back there, because otherwise I would go back again. What was the food like? The food was very similar, like if you go to El Chalán here, or Aria de Peru, like Peruvian food, very, very similar. Matter of fact, I go to El Chalán pretty often, and I get a fish, corvina, fish there, and when I go there, if fish dinner is $12, I got the same dinner in Cuenca for $6. It's very, very inexpensive. I got my hair cut. My haircut cost, I got it cut twice, because once it wasn't even cut. The first time it was $7. The second time I went to a big mall where they had a more fancy place, and it was $15. Well, if you just get a blow dry here, nothing, just getting it blow dry, it's $23. So some things are much cheaper there. So it's good life, and the standard of living seems to be good and quite reasonable. I was telling you about the people there. Well, the people who were in charge, they were just every place. And if the problems with the toilet, they were in there fixing that. One night, 3 of us were trying to play bridge, which was really a laugh. And we saw the guy walking by. I said, "What are you doing with a hacksaw?" Because somebody apparently got locked out, and so he was trying to rescue them, which I guess he did. The last day, they had a graduation ceremony. They put a robe and hat on each of us, in turn, and took pictures of us. I got a very fancy mask. They gave me a very fancy mask because of my sociability and my going to all the bars and talking about Another way, we went to the bar, just a couple of things that were done on a routine basis. Once a week, we'd meet in a bar with our instructors, and we had to speak Spanish. If we didn't speak Spanish, we'd have to put a dime in the kitty. And that was a lot of fun because we talked to them about their personal lives. It was just, and they were all young. All the instructors were all young people. So that was a lot of fun. They had salsa dancing lessons every week at the school. They had different tastings of different foods. They had a cooking class one night. They had a very nice, varied program. And my understanding was that when we were there in September, their program for March was already full. So it's been a very, very popular program, and I would certainly be interested in finding something similar at a future date. So do you have any questions or anything? Yeah, Clara.
How'd you communicate with the hairdresser about how to cut your hair? You went like this or
Poorly,
el
well,
Cato? I don't know.
yeah, that's about it. Yeah, that was about it. That's a very interesting point because when I was there, we take taxis a lot, and matter of fact, I went to the beauty parlor the first time, I had the name of a place, and then I had a backup idea because I knew where a mall was. That it was called the Super Maxi, so I was sure he'd know what that was. So I gave him the information where I wanted to go, and I finally gave up, and I said, take me to the Super Maxi. So it was difficult, and we always communicated in Spanish. Now, never all the time I was there, when I was talking to anybody from there, did we communicate in English. But on our way back, we stayed at that Swiss hotel again overnight, and I went up to the desk that sits in Quito, and I asked him something, and she immediately answered me in English. So I mean that would happen here too. I mean, I don't know that I would get much practice speaking here because they'll answer you in English. You're too slow. It takes too much time. Well, there, that never happened. But it was difficult. But it was such a challenge, and it was so much fun. To go to a market and have to make yourself known on what you wanted. It was just a ball. Donna.
What was the airfare from here, Ila Jane?
Wait, I can tell you.
I saw the brochure.
Yeah, it
but
wasn't on the
it didn't
brochure.
It didn't have the airfare included,
Right, I know.
just out of curiosity.
The air was $709. The trip, just so you know, it was really, really cheap. It was a very cheap. The invoice price was $41.54 for a month, and we had to buy. I'm sure it didn't cost me much more than $5,000 for the whole month. It was very, very cheap, very cheap. Now I looked at the one for Provence. I don't really want to learn French, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm sure that one will be double. I'm sure it'll be at least double. But this was very, very inexpensive. And the people, that was the thing that was the unknown. I mean, I had a pretty good sense of what I was getting myself in for, but I had no idea what the people would be like. And they were terrific. I mean, they were just wonderful. I never had to go myself to go to eat or anything. There was always people around to go out for lunch, to go out for dinner. One weekend, some of the people went to the beach, and some of us went to a resort and stayed overnight. You just went with whoever was available, and they were all just lovely. A lot of professional people, very modest people. There weren't people there that you think there were people there were doctors, there were lawyers, there were all kinds of professional people, but everybody was very laid back and very modest. You never felt anyone was putting on airs or anything of that nature. It was very comfortable and very nice. Okay.